Hey everybody, it's Amit. Welcome back to the channel. On this channel, I talk about stocks, investing, and finance. I have $29,000 into Palantir. It was $25,000 about 2 weeks ago. So obviously, I like the company a lot. I am very aggressive about understanding the company a little bit more, and I hope these videos offer some information and some value when it comes to understanding really what the strategy is behind this company, behind innovation, behind artificial intelligence, and behind the intersection of all three of those things resulting in unbelievable technological disruption over the next decade. Cathie Wood, famous ARK investor, the investor of the ARK Innovation Fund, creator of that fund, has over $1 billion invested into Palantir. It is one of the only stocks out of 2 stocks that are in all 6 of the ARK ETF catalogs. Did an interview in February 2021 about Palantir. Some people might have seen this, some people might have not, some people might have forgot about it. It's only a 2-minute clip. I want to watch it and analyze it today. Now we are in December 2021. We're ending off the year, and it's really time to understand what's gone on with Palantir. It ran up to 45, now it's down to 18s. It's really testing the lows, could probably get even lower than this. Was she right? What were her thoughts about Palantir when she invested in it? And what ultimately does she see as the trajectory for the company? I want to analyze that today. I want to take a look at this clip. We're going to talk about it. We're going to react to it. And then we're going to do some analysis ultimately on what Cathie and ARK think about the future of Palantir. As always, we're going to have the video right down in the corner. So I'll be watching it while you're watching it. And we'll take some momentary pauses to analyze and discuss what's going on with this interview. By the way, as soon as this starts off, you'll see Zoom at $427. Now it's at like 180 or something. So times have changed.
Palantir, which we just found out you've added to. Can you tell our viewers why you added rather significantly to your stake in Palantir?
Yes, they reported yesterday, and the stock was down on the report. It's interesting to listen to the CEO. He was speaking our language. He essentially said to investors, we are playing in a massive space here, and we're going to invest aggressively now in order to capitalize on the exponential changes that are taking place here. So if you are short-term in your focus, you probably don't want to spend too much time investing in Palantir.
So that's the first thing that she said in February 2021. Now it's December 2021. Really important thing to analyze there. Number one, she said if you are short term, you should not be invested in the stock. And she's not saying this. Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir, is saying this. She's just quoting him, and she agrees with that hypothesis. So for everyone who's like, oh my gosh, we're down 20%, and it's like crashing, and Palantir should be $50 right now, you're not understanding why one of the only funds in the United States put $1 billion into the company. They agree with the philosophical premise around this company, which is that it is a long-term play. It should be considered a long-term play. And there's a variety of foundational elements to understand the logic for why it should be long-term. So, crying about it being low or crying that it's dipping right now, instead of understanding the massive opportunity for that, seems to be counter what the strategies are of the institutions that are actually putting much, much, much more money than retail investors like you and I into the stock in and of itself. So that's the first thing. From February to December, her tone really hasn't changed on the concept of we need to keep on loading the boat, because when it does explode, it is going to explode because of how transformational the company is. And this is proven not through another interview she's done about Palantir since February, but rather through her actions, putting in, at this time, she had, I think, like maybe 50 million of Palantir, and now she's at $1 billion. So really, really 10x her position off this hypothesis of making it a long-term 5-year horizon.
So that's music to our ears, because, and we do believe more and more companies are going to start behaving in this way instead of catering to short-term time horizons and what we would say, in some cases, short-sighted shareholders who are much more interested in profits now, dividends now, share repurchases now, than they are in a company investing aggressively, foregoing short-term profitability in order to really catch some very big waves out there. So I'm astonished. Their revenues are still 61% government, but I've learned, and I think most people in the innovation space have learned over time, that some of the most important innovations in our lifetimes have started in the government, especially in the defense sector and in the intelligence sector.
Okay, so really important point there. The Q3 earnings were not as phenomenal as they should have been for Palantir from a stock price perspective, primarily because a lot of people thought the commercial side of the business didn't increase as much as it could have. Now, it increased a lot more than it increased from previous quarters, but it wasn't enough to make Wall Street happy. I mean, they didn't see like 1,000 new commercial clients, right? So at the time of February, and it's kind of the same now, it's a little bit of change, but a lot of the revenue is still coming from governments. What Cathie is saying is that innovation, if it's subsidized by the government, is not a bad thing. This is what's happened with Tesla and electric vehicles, right? Governmental subsidies. A lot of times Tesla remained profitable only because they were able to gain extra purchases off carbon credits that other companies had to purchase as per regulatory guidelines, right? Like if you're a Ford, you don't make any electric vehicles, you need to stay within the regulations for climate change that the United States has imposed because the United States wants to be a leader on climate change. Then you have to buy carbon credits and you have to pay companies that are doing the hard work of actually making sure that their processes and their distributions of vehicles are electric and don't release any gas into the environment. So it's really important to understand that from the intelligence perspective and the defense perspective, defense being the Gotham and Apollo softwares of Palantir, and I'm going to do some more videos explaining those a little bit more in depth. And from the intelligence perspective, which is more of the Foundry software, and I've done a lot of videos on that explaining what Foundry truly is and how transformational it is for different companies that want to ultimately optimize their data and become more efficient and effective because of the data optimization, ultimately saving money, which is, the nature of business, right? If you can save a business money, there's a lot of money to be made. That if the government subsidizes that for the past 20 years, which is what the US government has been doing for Palantir, in order for Palantir to innovate what the company could be versus venture capitalists and Silicon Valley people who are just looking for profits, then that's actually phenomenal for innovation. I mean, what company would not want to have the government, which is ultimately the products that they're creating to serve in a meaningful way, pay them to do the work so they don't have to be under the pressure of venture capitalists or shareholders who want to return. And they have 17 years Palantir had from 2003 to 2020 before it went public through a direct listing to really understand what the nature of this product could be and why this product could be so transformational across the world. I mean, we're talking about a company that says that they have the potential not only to become 20 times bigger than they are right now, but to become one of the most important software companies on the planet, bar none. That's job is not to sell advertising, right? You think of Google right now, they're the most important software company in the world, I would say. And what do? They sell ads. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a phenomenal thing that they do for the world, especially for the creators of the world to actually gather and access information. But you think about a company doing something a little bit more important, like protecting, freedom. That's what you're talking about in the context of Palantir. So the governmental argument that has been made over the past couple months of why Palantir is not growing and should not be growing as fast is actually doubling down the conviction for why Cathie even invested in the first place.
So we think in many ways, and they won't talk about how, but they're certainly garnering a lot of business, which tells us that they are seeing in the future and investing in the future in ways that companies, governments, but increasingly companies are going to need, especially as we're competing against China. I think we've been, again, with this short-term time horizon, we have not been spending enough in innovation. And so, Palantir's attitude is refreshing. It's exactly how we invest. We want our companies to invest aggressively. We don't want profits now. We want them to invest aggressively because we're moving into many winner-take-most markets. And the autonomous taxi world is a very good example of that. That is why our confidence in Tesla, going back to the largest position in our portfolio, is so high.
All right, so really good point at the end, what she's talking about. It's a winner-takes-all market. There's a lot of sort of FUD out there, which is fear, uncertainty, and doubt, around why Palantir even is unique, right? Isn't it just like some software, you just pull up data, et cetera, et cetera? And the people who are making these arguments don't really understand the multiples by which the market values other competitors. I'm going to do more videos on this in the future to really break down, to go deep into the numbers. Companies like Snowflake and Datadog and all of these companies that seemingly do some of the same things that people say Palantir does are valued even higher than Palantir. So that's the first thing. Number two, they're not recognizing the nature by which Palantir optimizes data and makes data more efficient across different sectors. And what Cathie is saying is like, look, Palantir is probably first to the party. Maybe, there's some other people there, but they're really first to the party. But other people are going to try to catch up. Like Amazon might take a play at this. Microsoft might take a play at this. They're mainly made for cloud computing. It's not that they're going to be direct competitors, but they're going to offer some tangential services that may take away some market share from Palantir. So her argument is like, if we're going for a moonshot, if we're not going for like, 2% return every year or 5% return every year, but we're actually going for the 6,000% return, the things that she's benefited from Tesla, off this hypothesis that there could be an autonomous robo-taxi network that hasn't even happened yet, and the stock has already risen just at a dramatic capacity over the past year and a half, then that only happens when a company stays down for multiple years and tries to figure out what it's doing before it has the explosion that is needed from the entire world to recognize the value of what it's doing. And that's why she's ultimately bullish on this idea of being long-term, not being short-term, but recognizing that in being long-term, they're capturing so much market share of this very specific market, which is how to optimize data in the most effective way for every single company in the world, whether you're a blockchain company, healthcare company, energy company, media company. I did a video yesterday on Palantir and Ringer's journalism efforts. This is a media company in Switzerland, which Palantir has optimized their ability to analyze and understand how to protect independent journalism by just making their company more efficient. Palantir has worked with Kinder Morgan, which is an energy company. I mean, they've worked with a car energy with a data car startup called Wejo, where Wejo might be potentially competing with big data with Tesla. I mean, there's so many different things that Palantir has its hands in, especially because Palantir is investing in a lot of different things, i.e. via its SPAC thesis. I'll leave a link in the description for what that thesis is and how they're making investments in data-driven startups and making those startups ultimately customers of Palantir software. There's a lot of unique things philosophically Palantir is doing and practically that they're doing to be the winner takes all of the data market. They have a belief that data is the new oil. And if data is the new oil, and we as human beings still don't understand how important data truly will be over the next 10 years as data increases at exponential levels, when more and more people enter the internet, when the internet becomes more and more crowded, and when legacy services simply seem to dissipate away, what's left is the data that companies and individuals have on how their lives are being optimized around the things that they interact with, particularly the mobile applications and the general softwares that they use to engage with life. That's not going backwards. We're not going away from that. Like, we're not going to read the newspaper. We're going to pull it up on our phone when we read the article, or pull it up in glasses. But it's not going back to the past. So if it's not going back to the past, the company that ultimately wins is the company that loses now, that doesn't go from $18 to $45 like people want, but rather goes from $45 to $18 because the market doesn't understand what they're doing. And in the meantime, they're given the freedom and the opportunity to just get more and more market share, get their hands in more and more places, integrate within the ontology and the fabric of every single company that truly needs to understand how to make their data more effective and more efficient and more optimized. And then they take the entire market. And that's ultimately what I think her thesis is on Palantir, and that's why I think her thoughts really haven't changed since February 2021, and why she continues to buy the dip on the company. So those are my thoughts on Palantir. Those are my thoughts on Cathie Wood's investing in Palantir. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on her thesis ultimately on Palantir. This is Amit, Daily Business Show. I'll see you in the next one.